They who dream by day are cognized of many things which escape those who dream only by night. In their gray visions they obtain glimpses of eternity and thrill in waking to find that they have been upon the verge of great success. Hello and welcome back to Sports Talk with Dad on this very special Halloween episode. My name is Kyle, and as always, I cannot call this Sports Talk with Dad without the man sitting across from me, a man who was there for the Salem witch trials, my dad, Tim.
I had to hide myself. I had aspirin in my pocket. I thought that was magic.
What?
Hey, I was going with the fact I was at the Salem witch trials. I think it would have been fun to be there. But
Unless you were, told you were a witch.
Modern day people would have been viewed as witches by the people in Salem.
Well, of course. An interesting time, an interesting history. That was, by the way, from Eleonora from Edgar Allan Poe. I was going to go with The Raven, but I don't really get it.
I would have done The Pit and Pendulum.
That's also a very good one.
That is
The Raven is probably, because I have a book of Edgar Allan Poe poems, and I read it every time this year. The Raven is probably one of my least favorite. I don't know how that became the most popular. Everybody's like, well, it's so obvious.
Not so much.
It's not. It's really not. You really have to read into it to understand it.
Look, poetry is, I know it's beautiful. Love Robert Frost and those kinds of things. Hemingway was a poet.
Yeah.
But you've got to read so much into every poem you read. It's not just right out there. And Raven is in that category.
You have to understand the poet that wrote the poem to really get it. Sylvia Plath is another one that I've known quite a few of the female variety that have enjoyed Sylvia Plath. That one that I was like, I probably shouldn't date this girl. But that was a very...
You did anyways, or is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I married her. But I was like, I don't get this. Like, this is really depressing. But it's interesting because, my wife is very much an intellectual. She's gotten me into a lot of different things.
She's very well read.
Yes, that I didn't know existed, which I really enjoy. And she really studied the person of Sylvia Plath. It's like, okay, when you do that, it makes sense. The same thing as Edgar Allan Poe.
I don't think I want to... I've read a lot about Edgar Allan Poe.
He was a weird dude. He married his 13-year-old cousin. 12-year-old cousin.
Speaking of which, before we go any farther, a moment of silence. Jerry Lee Lewis passed away. The killer is dead.
Did he?
Yep, he passed away at...
Well, great balls of fire.
Very good, well played. I think he was like 85 years old. He also married his 13 or 14-year-old
cousin. Yep, Elvis also had a relationship with like a 14-year-old cousin.
Didn't want to hear that.
Yeah.
I mean...
A lot of it was... I don't know.
They go to jail for that today, and I honestly think that's probably better.
Yeah, they probably should have back then, too.
Back in the day, in Salem witch days, if you were 14, you were an old maid.
It's true. It's true. It's a different time. We cannot judge by different times unless it was in the 50s because it was gross. Even then, as you can see, I am dressed up for Halloween.
I didn't get the memo.
You have failed.
I didn't get the memo.
It's Halloween.
No.
You should know to dress up.
Monday is Halloween.
This is our Halloween episode.
I'm dressed up as a dad.
I guess. You dressed up as an old man, and that's okay. I would have expected some pilgrim clothes, something from when you were a child.
Wow.
Because it was All Saints Day back then. A little history lesson. Halloween
All Saints Day is November 1st.
Halloween came...
All Hallows Eve.
All Hallows Eve, which was a pagan holiday.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as the Catholics do, they decided to take over that pagan holiday and made it All Saints Day, which you dress up as your favorite saint and go to church. And then we, in the early 1900s, late 1800s, started to adopt the pagan traditions as more of a child way of doing things, where children could go out and about. And then, as always, adults ruin the holiday, which is why I hate Halloween.
Yeah, they really have. It's not a night for adults to go out and create mayhem. It's a time for kids to go and get candy
Correct.
that their parents can then eat.
Listen, I defend my generation through and through on this show, and I have, and I will continue to, but when it comes to Halloween, I can't. My generation has ruined Halloween. It's sad.
We had back when you were a kid, and you would never come out of the house. You didn't want to go trick or treat.
I didn't like Halloween. I didn't like being scared. I still don't like being scared.
I don't either. We had a big haunted house. I think we've mentioned it once or twice before, like when I dug up a hole in the yard. But, one year we had like 986 kids. It was the place to go and get candy from. My favorite decoration of all time is when I took an old card table chair, cut a hole in it, put a bowl on top of it with a look like a mask covered head into it, and you were sitting inside of it. You enjoyed that part.
I did enjoy that part. I enjoy scaring people. I just don't like being scared.
Well,
but it was in good fun. Like, you could tell that it was fake. Like, everybody knew.
You wouldn't even go with us to the Circus World Museum. Your brother and I went, and they played old Bugs Bunny and
I don't
cartoons on the big screen.
Clowns. I don't do clowns.
There weren't many clowns there.
It's Circus World. I'm not dumb. I wasn't dumb back then. I'm not dumb now. My kids, we were in the Dells, which is very close to Baraboo, where the Circus World is, and they saw signs for it and asked about it. And I said, it is a place you guys can go when I am not around.
Aww.
I'm not allowed back. And that's a story for a different day that I will happily tell.
It, but we will do that.
But it will be on a different day. Basically, some people just don't listen. And that's the moral of that story.
We did have one Halloween tradition when you were in high school.
Yes.
There is a very, very old cemetery outside of Portage, Wisconsin, where we were living.
It is the number 2 most haunted place in the entire state.
We called it Witches Cemetery. It's
Church Road.
Out on Church Road. And we went there with your friend Nate one time. And we all piled in, and I stayed back by the car so you guys could go and explore, and he had a video camera and everything. Nate was obsessive about detailing his car every week.
Correct.
This was on a Saturday, so he had just detailed his car.
Yes.
You guys got a little freaked out, as most people do. Either you saw the lantern or heard the tractor, whatever you hear there.
Or you just hear it in your brain.
I've heard both. I heard a gunshot.
Yeah, our brains do funny things. But this one I cannot explain.
Okay, so you guys get freaked out. You come and run. They all get into the car. Nate's driving about a half mile down the road, and all of a sudden he screeches to a stop, gets out, and is crying.
Yes.
He is so scared. What did you do? What did you do? I'm going, what do you mean? I didn't do anything. Your car was locked. What's wrong? And on the rear window, on the back inside part of his car, were 2 kids' handprints.
Well, here's the freaky part, and this is the part I can't.
Not freaky enough.
It gets freakier because this is the part I can't explain. One, it was a big hand with a little hand inside. Perfect prints with a big hand, little hand inside. The other thing is, the smudge was dirt, okay? The dirt was on the outside of the window. It was a palm print. Yet, the palm print looked as if it was pushed from the inside of the window. Again, the dirt that made the handprint was on the outside of the car, but
it was like
both fingerprints were like this. Handprints. It was on the right side of the car, and it was a left-hand palm print facing the opposite way. It looked, I mean, you would have had to push your palm up from the inside of the car.
Through the glass.
That's how that would have happened. And that's the only time. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in any of that stuff. But that is the one I, to this day, cannot explain.
There are ghosts.
There are not ghosts.
There, all evidence to the contrary, considering what's happened to me, there are ghosts. But we'll save that for another day. No, we'll save it for another day.
It's our Halloween episode.
All right, true story. All right, 2 true stories.
True.
Yeah, what did I say? It didn't sound right. No, these are very true stories.
True, you're right.
One was a dream.
One was a dream.
The night your cousin passed away when she was 17.
Yes.
Came to me in a dream and said, tell everybody I'm going to be all right. It was the most vivid dream I've ever had. She was on a hill with a white gown.
Yes. That's not paranormal ghost. That's different.
Next one is, we are getting ready to go out of town for several days.
Right.
Your mom and I are in bed. It's about 2:30 in the morning.
Right.
All of a sudden, your Uncle Bill, who lived in Texas, was on the Gulf all the time. So he smelled like salt water.
Yeah,
Sure. It's just nothing bad, but it's just his
has
smell.
distinct smell.
All of a sudden, I smell that, and your mom smells that, and I wake up, and he's standing at the end of my bed in his normal clothes, and he's going, "What the hell are you doing laying in bed when your mother is at the bottom of the GD stairs over at our house?" This is at 2:30 in the morning. I was awake at that point. And I went over to Mom's house. I broke into the house, and we were not going over there again because we were leaving. We'd already seen her last night. Go over there. She's at the bottom of the stairs. She had fallen down.
Yes.
And she would have been there for days if I hadn't went over.
That's not ghost stories.
Having somebody appear at the end of your bed is, in fact,
there's a difference between a spirit and the paranormal. Those are different things.
I know.
I believe in those things. I've had things like that happen, be it brain or whatever it is, also in my life. That is not ghosts.
Yes, you were visited.
Yes. When I was a kid, I had a very outer body experience, and it saved my life in the end. But that's a story for another day. But that is not a ghost story.
I understand that. I get it. I believe in paranormal the scariest movies in the world for me are like Paranormal Activity.
Sure.
I don't like
because it's the unexplained.
Yes. So I thought it'd be fun to go over some of the best Halloween movies. Not necessarily scariest.
I probably haven't seen most of them.
Okay.
I don't watch these type of movies. I like certain movies. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I actually really enjoyed. Hatchet is a slasher flick that whenever I was in a bad mood, it was just fun to watch because it was cartoony enough. I actually liked Evil Clowns from Outer Space because it was funny. It was serious but funny. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
That's classic.
Was amazing. I like satires in that sense. But when it comes to movies like Poltergeist, I have no interest in seeing that movie.
You're back. That's a great movie.
The last actual scary movie I watched was they did a remake of a movie from the 60s or 70s where the call's coming from inside the house where the girl was babysitting in the middle of nowhere.
Oh.
What is that called?
God.
I saw it in theaters because a girl I liked wanted to go and see it. And that was the last one. I couldn't handle it. Like, it wasn't even scary. It's just I couldn't handle it because it was too real for me.
Okay. And as we're going through this list, I don't agree with the list because number one, they've just got different ways of handling these things. I like movies like Hocus Pocus.
I like Hocus Pocus.
Halloween movies.
The remake was really bad.
I haven't seen it, and I'm not going to. Nightmare Before Christmas is a Halloween movie, I think.
I consider it a Halloween movie. I know people that consider it a Christmas movie, but those people and me have different ideas of what Christmas is. So
yes. So, and I love the old monster movies like Dracula and Frankenstein and Wolfman from back in the 30s.
Sure.
Because they're kind of suspenseful.
Right.
I will watch any
suspense movies are great.
Yes. Any his name just escaped me.
Vincent Price.
Vincent Price. Thank you. Wow. Vincent Price movie. One of the best movies I've ever seen. Pit and the Pendulum.
Yep.
He's just a master at it.
I was introduced to Vincent Price in The Muppet Show.
I can believe that. He was so good.
Watch reruns of The Muppet Show, and he was on.
Most people know him as what nowadays?
Well, he was the voice in Thriller.
Exactly.
For the Michael Jackson music song video thing. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
No.
Which is probably the greatest Halloween song of all time, by the way, if we're talking songs.
That or Monster Mash?
I would have to say Thriller. Monster Mash was also good. Thriller I could see Monster Mash being niche, and kind of disappearing a little bit. Thriller will stand for all time.
And because of Vincent Price's...
Correct.
Auditory, whatever. The way he read the...
I knew you were struggling, which is why I said correct, to give you the chance to move on from it. You buried yourself on that.
I couldn't help myself. The way he said the last line and that laugh was brilliant.
Yes. But Vincent Price is one of the greatest scary movie actors of his time. It's where typecasting wasn't a bad thing.
Probably of all time.
Yeah.
He was also a brilliant, very much a Shakespearean actor.
Here's a trivia question for you. Vincent Price in the 1966 Batman television series played an evil villain. What was that evil villain's name?
He was almost a comical villain.
When he does that. I hate when he does that.
Yeah. He was always on with...
I thought he played it great, considering who the character was. They've tried to bring that character back.
Don't bring it back. I mean, he's the only one that can play it. He was always there with Marcia from Russia, and it was too comical. They had him riding a donkey, and Vincent Price is a class act, not a buffoon. They didn't like Egghead. You can never stump me with any of those questions. You should know better.
Challenge accepted.
A Batman question from an old TV show?
Accepted.
Go ahead. Make my day.
I don't have one now.
I know you don't. Okay, so this is the list of the best, their list of the best horror movies, Halloween movies of all time.
I'm in.
I don't agree. Number 1, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay.
I would say Exorcist is number 1. Nothing was more suspenseful or scarier.
What is unique about Texas Chainsaw Massacre? They did something very specific to try and not get an R rating.
Film the closing scenes outside Portage, Wisconsin?
No.
Oh.
No.
Based it on Psycho?
There was no blood in the entire movie.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Everything is in your mind. If you look at somebody hanging from a hook, there's no actual blood.
Which is great.
In your mind. I like that type of stuff. Like, let your mind go. I hate gore. And that's all horror movie is now. But anyways, continue. I'm sorry.
Here's one I've never even heard of. Suspiria, 1977. I don't even know what it is. Number 3 is Poltergeist.
Never seen it.
Great movie.
No interest.
Paranormal coming through the TV.
Mm-hmm. I've seen enough clips to understand the concept of the movie.
Number 4, the 1982 remake of The Thing. And not my cup of tea. Hereditary. Never saw it.
What that is.
Creep Show. That was a good movie.
Don't know what that is.
It was back in the 80s. It's a good movie. Alien.
Never seen it.
You've never seen Alien with Sigourney Weaver? And
I have been told several times it needs to be on my list of movies to see. I haven't seen it.
This is absolutely one that should be higher on the list. The Shining.
The Shining was great.
Here's Johnny.
Stephen King actually did not like the movie adaptation of The Shining. It is one of his least favorite movies that has been adapted from his book. They said they didn't focus on the main character falling into madness due to solitary and alcoholism enough.
Who was originally offered that role?
I don't know.
Burt Reynolds.
Oh, I could see him with that. It wouldn't have been as good.
He turned it down to do the movie he did with Ned Beatty where they were in the backwoods of Arkansas. Can't remember the name of it.
No idea.
You remember, put it in the comments. Number 11, they have The Omen. Again,
Never seen it.
Another good one. I'm going through this list, and I'm just kind of picking out ones I know. The Exorcist was 14 on my list. It's number 1.
That does seem very low.
It does, considering the mass hysteria that movie caused.
Yeah, that was a good movie. I like that movie.
Based on a true story of a teenage boy in St. Louis.
Loosely based.
Loosely based, yeah.
Yeah, the dude's head didn't spin in circles like... He didn't vomit like that at people.
Well, he didn't have a mouthful of pea soup.
He didn't look like that. And then magically, all of a sudden, his face is perfectly better after it's...
Hey, it was a good movie.
Medically deformed.
It was a great movie. Return of the Living Dead. I like The Night of the Living Dead from the 50s.
Who directed that? What's his name? Frank Gorsham? No. That's somebody else.
I can't remember. This is way too low. Halloween, the original. That should be way up there.
I've never seen the original. I saw the Rob Zombie remakes.
Yeah, Halloween was a great movie.
They were dumb.
The Candyman.
I've never seen it, but I do know it.
Sammy Davis Jr., I think.
No. What?
Candyman. Candyman makes everything.
Willy Wonka reference. Got it.
No, Sammy Davis Jr. sang the song and got a number 1 hit with it.
He did. He wasn't the Candyman in the movie.
Okay.
And wasn't the Candyman in that movie either. So technically, he's never been in a movie where he's been the Candyman.
Got it. Here's one that I haven't even seen on the list, but The Fly isn't on here. American Werewolf in London. That was a great movie. I love that one. Nightmare on Elm Street. They have it number 80 or at number 22.
I mean, that's
Way too
ridiculous.
low.
That's quintessential Halloween movie.
Yeah.
Just like Friday the 13th.
Scream is 24. They don't even
That's
have
too low.
They don't even have the Saw on here.
Scream was great. The original Saw was an amazing movie.
I never saw this original Scream.
It's really good.
Okay.
It's really good. What's his name? I mean, it was who's who in that movie that ended up becoming stars in the 90s. But one of my favorite performances in that, I can't remember his name. He played Shaggy in the Scooby-Doo movies. Matt.
Oh, no, Shaggy. Wasn't that Freddie Prinze Jr.? Or
No,
he
played Fred.
Fred. Okay.
No, Shaggy was Matt. I forget his last name. I could look it up. I'm not going to. But he is one of my all-time favorite actors, and he was in that, and he nailed it. He was amazing. But you know the story behind it, right? It's actually based off a true story.
No, I've
two
never
guys
seen
go insane and decide to just murder all their friends.
Alrighty then. Okay.
It's based off a story that happened at the University of Florida in Gainesville.
Before or after Ted Bundy? No, that was Florida State.
That was Florida State, yeah. I think this was after Ted Bundy.
Okay. Rosemary's Baby. You probably have never seen that, starring Mia Farrow, giving birth to the
devil.
The devil, yeah. Here's one that I
never even seen the movie and understand the premise.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves and Jack Nicholson. No, it's not Nicholson. It's is it De Niro? No, it's either De Niro or is it? I think it's Robert De Niro.
I don't know. We both have computers in front of us.
Yeah, we are looking this up because I just saw that movie. But Devil's Advocate is an unbelievably good movie. The Ring I've never seen. Jaws is on the list. Jaws is on the list.
Jaws is terrifying. Al Pacino.
Al Pacino, okay. That's right.
And Charlize Theron.
I don't remember her. I just remember Keanu Reeves, which is brilliant in the movie. And if you haven't seen that, that's a scary movie, but it's a great movie. Suspenseful. I like suspenseful movies. Like Paranormal Activity scared the crap out of me.
You know what's a really good movie that's underrated in my opinion is Fallen with Denzel Washington and John Goodman.
That was an awesome movie.
It's a very good movie. Very suspenseful.
Exactly. The other movie that's not on here, here's one that's very good, but it's 32. It should be much higher. The Fly with Jeff Goldblum. That was an amazing movie. I love that movie.
Bits and pieces of it.
That's one of the few that's better in the remake than it was in the original.
Yeah. I've never seen the original.
I've seen it. It's a 1950 monster movie. Psycho is not on this list.
Psycho isn't on a list of top Halloween movies?
I take that back. It's at the bottom of the list.
Oh, and this is a dumb list. What list is this?
Greatest
from
Halloween movies. I don't know from whom.
Look at what webpage is this?
It is on Timeout.
Well, they should be put on timeout.
Yes,
because this list is stupid.
It is. Invasion of the Body Snatchers in '78 was a brilliant movie starring Donald Sutherland. 34. No. These are all.
If you have Psycho at the bottom of your list, you've lost.
It's already
lost.
It's
the horror movie.
Absolutely, it is. And Carrie is not on this list.
Well, then the list is dumb.
Okay.
If you do not have in the top 10 the movies that people think of when it comes to Halloween movies, like this isn't your preference. This is the top 10 movies of all time.
Right.
Like you just decided I like this movie better than the other one. No, that's not how top lists work. You have to go based on what is universally considered Halloween movies.
The last one on the list is the Blair Witch Project.
I could never watch that. I get very motion sickness. I've tried watching that a couple of times and have to turn it off. Same thing with Cloverfield. I can't watch Cloverfield. Well, it makes me sick.
And as far as the best music goes, we talked a little bit about Monster Mash. Sorry, I was thinking of the guy's name. Monster Mash being a great song.
Yeah, Thriller's the number one song. I mean, Ghostbusters is up there.
The music from Halloween, the music from The Exorcist.
Sure, the music from Jaws.
All of those are just unbelievable, and I love them. And you can't find a list that has the music and all the movie soundtracks at the same place.
Oh, really?
No, it was... I sent you a list. I don't know if we
There's
ever.
a scientific reason why. I read an article a couple years ago, and I'm not going to reference it because I don't remember it, but it was talking about the reason those songs instill fear in people. It has something to do with the beats and the tones, and it's very scientific. It was an interesting read. Look it up. Like I said, I'm not referencing it. I don't remember what it's called.
Look, I loved Halloween. I love Put a Spell on You.
Because now you're mine.
Yeah, that was from
Hocus Pocus.
Hocus Pocus, originally done by.
Hocus Pocus.
No, it was done by, I don't know, some screaming something or other.
You know what song still gives me nightmares to this day is the Come Little Children from Hocus Pocus. That Come Little Children.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Such a great song.
Creepy.
Did Sarah Jessica Parker actually sing that?
Oh, no, probably.
I don't know. Disney always has a way of not using the actors to sing. But that's on voice acting stuff, though.
And here's a movie that didn't make the list and may be the greatest Halloween movie of all time.
Wizard of Oz.
No. But is one where adults go dressed up at midnight to see the show. Where is Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Rocky Horror Picture Show should be on the list.
And Time Warp, one of the greatest songs.
Rocky Horror Picture Show is my first true adult experience as a kid. They used to play it. They used to play at the Orpheum in Madison all the time. They played on Saturday nights.
Saturday night at midnight, we all went to the Orpheum to see the movie.
Yes, they had brought it back. A lot of my older friends, when I was a freshman in high school, I did a lot of plays. I was in the Crucible, speaking of Salem witch trials. And it's actually the first time I even got drunk, which is interesting. I had to. So I play the sheriff in the Crucible, right? And the sheriff,
I know, I saw the play.
He's drunk in the end. Why I had never been drunk before.
Okay.
And so everybody was criticizing me. The director kept getting on my ass because I wasn't doing it well, because I just was speaking loud in what I saw on TV. And so I told him, I'm like, you guys have to take me and get me drunk. Like, I have to know how to play this. And that's the reason I got drunk for the first time and threw up a lot. But anyways.
Okay. How many parents have heard that excuse as to why some underage kids got drunk at home?
It was for the play. It 100% was.
Sorry, Mama.
I had no interest in drinking. I really didn't drink a lot in high school. It didn't interest me. But for the play, I'm like, I have to know how to play this part of the play. And I don't right now.
Well, think about this. I saw it at the Orpheum way back in the day. In the 80s. And it was still playing when you were in high school.
I think they still do it now. I don't know if it's at the Orpheum anymore. I've seen it at some drive-ins. They've had some special nights for it. I mean, I can't wait to introduce my kids to it. I'm going to try and let their friends introduce them to it because I think it's a better experience that way. Yeah. But if they don't, I will introduce them to Rocky Horror Picture Show. I went there not knowing what it was. And it was one of the most fun experiences of my life.
It's awesome. No, I didn't go dressed up as anything.
I didn't either, but I was handed fishnets I had to put on.
There you go.
I got there and they said, you need to put on fishnets. And so I don't know where they came from. I don't know who they belong to.
That is your little sister's favorite soundtrack. She knows the words.
It's a great soundtrack.
And the only debate we ever have about it, because I like the music from the awful TV version of it that they did. Awful.
They should have never done it. I have a lot of opinions on the TV version that I'm going to keep to myself. But
she liked Adam Lambert better than Meatloaf.
Well, she's wrong.
She's wrong because Meatloaf is the iconic version, but she can sing every note, every word of that song, and she's been able to do it since I first introduced her to it when she was about 13.
Well, that's bad parenting.
I thought it was good parenting, actually.
I mean, I guess you didn't hear the things that I heard shouted at a movie screen.
I didn't take her to the Orpheum.
That's good.
Because
okay.
We were in Florida at the time.
Fair.
I would have when she was 17, 18.
Fair.
But
the only reason Meatloaf was in that movie was because the studio would not film a movie without an actual star being in the film.
And that came out right around the time of...
And Meatloaf was huge at that time. It was right when Bat Out of Hell came out.
Yep.
So they signed up Meatloaf for it, who actually plays the saxophone, which I didn't know.
He does. He was a brilliant singer. Paradise by the Dashboard Lights is one of the greatest songs ever recorded.
It's the greatest bathroom break song of all time when you're on radio. I can tell you that
That's
much.
not true, actually. Back in the day when you could play In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida
Oh,
full
sure.
length, I mean, that was when you really had to do everything.
I mean, that's
You
like a
put that on.
15-minute song.
Exactly.
That thing's got a whole ad catalog to
Oh
itself.
my God, you can conceive children during that song. That and the full version of American Pie was always a good backroom song when I needed a break. A great song.
It was a long time ago, before I could remember.
Well played.
I appreciate it. But we have talked a lot.
I think we should talk about sports sometime today.
We segued it very well together. I don't think I introduced the show well. I was too excited to quote Edgar Allan Poe. But we have a few things to talk about today. First and foremost, there is a huge outcry by the NFL right now, which has been interesting to me because it's a very much a change of opinion from when I was younger, which is Pete Carroll the other day, followed by Cooper Kupp, called out that all NFL stadiums need to go back to actual grass.
About time. I mean, look, I grew up in an era where they actually just put carpeting over the top of cement and said, here you go.
Or the Metrodome, which was, I don't even know what that was.
I don't either. I was in the Metrodome because I worked for the PR firm for the Twins. I literally dropped the baseball from my shoulder height. It bounced twice my head size.
Well, there was a player for the Twins. I don't remember his name. You probably will. But he realized you could get the ball to first. He plays shortstop, and you could get the ball faster to first base by bouncing it off the ground.
You know who originally thought of that idea? Davey Concepcion, who was the shortstop for the Cincinnati Reds when they had in Old Riverfront where they had the artificial turf. He figured out that if you bounce the ball right before the cutout of the dirt, it would get there faster. So here's the first one. But Humpty Dome was just awful.
It was really bad, to the point where God came down and said, "You are not playing in this anymore." And popped the giant hole in the bubble dome.
I thought field turf was something that was a compromise that everybody would love, but Pete Carroll and Cooper Kupp said no. It's not the same.
No, and I've heard a lot of players are coming out and saying that now. J.C. Tretter, who was the former NFLPA president when he was with the Browns, actually showed statistics where you're 28% more likely to get injured on field turf than you are on natural grass.
Then they need to make it go away. Here's my only question, of course. What do you do in Minnesota? What do you do in Chicago when they build their dome, in Detroit? Arizona does it right. They actually wheel it out and wheel it back in so they can use natural grass.
I don't know. Look what they do in Lambeau. I mean, it's there in the wintertime.
Lambeau doesn't have a roof, so the grass can actually grow during the year.
They also don't have sun.
No, but
so the grass doesn't grow.
Granted, it's more like dirt in December. I'm not
it's
arguing
ice.
that.
It's listening to the studies about it, because I ended up looking at the studies J.C. Tretter and Pete Carroll were talking about, and it does show if you're looking from a cutting standpoint where players are cutting. So it's mainly they're talking about skill players. Right. So receivers, running backs, safeties, corners, quarterbacks in this situation as well, where when they take that cut, it's not as hard of a surface. It's rubber and sand, and so you sink more in, which puts more pressure on your joints and allows you to be hurt. There's a running back that played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when it was the very first London game. He was a very good running back, Emmett something. I forget his name. I can look it up, but he got really hurt, and that's where it first came to light that different turfs aren't as good for playing on. But it's true. It's a different surface, and it obviously is leading to more injuries.
I remember back in the day when Barry Sanders was, and he always will be, one of the greatest running backs in history, probably arguably the number one. But he would light it up in Detroit underneath the dome. He'd come to Green Bay, especially late in the year, get no yardage. He just couldn't run on the grass. And it almost became a mental thing for him. He was not as good on natural grass as he was in the dome.
No, which is interesting because the Packers could have easily drafted him with the pick before.
I didn't say that to bring that up.
No, but it is a question, though, is say he would have been drafted by the Packers instead of Tony Mandrich. Would he have been as effective as a player in Green Bay as he was in Detroit? I think the answer is yes, because he played on grass in Oklahoma.
He would have figured it out.
But it is different. He
We're
couldn't cut as much.
Not to go down the squirrel path, but we chase squirrels all the time. So, of those, the top 4 Hall of Famers that were in that draft: Troy Aikman, Barry Sanders,
Deion
Sanders, and
Brooks.
Derek Brooks. Thank you. You're there. Who should the Green Bay have taken? Because everybody said Tony Mandrich was a pick. If we
They
didn't
should
take
have
him,
taken
somebody
Tony
else.
Mandrich.
I don't disagree with that. It was
In that draft, you should have taken Tony Mandrich. They had no idea he was juiced as the way that he was. They had no idea he was. I mean, should they have done more homework? Sure, but he was the greatest prospect to ever come into an NFL draft. The pick with the number 2 overall selection was Tony Mandrich. Period.
the incredible bulk.
And without that pick, we don't get Reggie White. We don't get Brett Favre. We don't get
Well, and they had Don McCown.
20 to 30 years of dominance in the NFC.
They got Manders. They had Don Mikowski at the time, who was a very good quarterback. People forget.
The last Packer quarterback to lead the league in NFL passing yards.
Correct. It was a good, and he went on to have a decent career playing in front of Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. People forget that. He actually
Correct.
had a good career.
Not Don Mikowski, Tony Mandrich.
No, Tony Manders did.
Got
He
it.
was
You did
offensive
not
lineman.
I thought you were talking Don Mikowski, so in case anybody else was with me.
Forgive my segue.
That's all good.
Again,
Yeah,
we
he
chased
came back at a
squirrels.
great career.
And he still owns land in northern Wisconsin to go hunting on, I believe.
I'm sure he seems like a fine person. I'm sure he's a great guy. It didn't work out, but the pick was Tony Mandrich. Like you can look at hindsight being 2020 all you want. I mean, in reality, what would have been an amazing pick would have been Derek Brooks, who ended up going to the Chiefs.
Sure.
I think that would have been the most impactful player that would have carried on. But who knows what those draft picks looks like for the Packers after that? Who knows if they build a dynasty? I mean, it was meant to be. Tony Mandrich was the correct pick with the number 2 overall selection.
If we get Derek Brooks, do we get Reggie White?
Do we
Maybe.
get Leroy Butler? Do we get Craig Newsome? Do we get
Brett Favre?
Brett Favre? Do we get Dorsey Levens? Do we get William Henderson? Do we get Frank Winters? I mean, you could go on and on and on about the roster.
You're a Packer fan and you know every player that's ever played until this year, which welcome back to my nightmare this year.
I'm not having too much fun right now.
Okay. We're getting back to the
So I wore Don Hudson. I figured we'll go back to championship years.
number 2 greatest receiver of all time.
No.
Yes.
No. Larry
Yes.
Fitzgerald outranks Don Hudson.
No, I still think it's Jerry Rice. And
Larry
Don Hudson.
Fitzgerald, with a better quarterback play over his career, would own every single wide receiver record.
Woulda, coulda,
known to
shoulda. If a dog eat a tree, he'd poop a canoe.
That's not how you say it.
I know that. Anyways, getting back to the turf, I've always thought that if you're playing outside, you should have grass.
I agree. The Packers tried to go to artificial turf one year, remember?
Yeah,
for the preseason.
They did that. Well, and didn't they put a strip in of it when it got cold?
They actually did it for a preseason game.
was-
They had artificial turf, and immediately
Yeah, they put in
It
the.
was removed.
It was pro turf. It wasn't field
Yeah.
turf.
it
And
was the first that had come out. They were doing it in Indianapolis at the time. They tried it for the preseason game, and fans freaked out.
it was awful.
And plus you have those heaters in Lambeau, and that was the real reason they took it away, was because the heaters were melting the rubber,
Which
and
is
it was
going to
destroying the
happen.
field. Now you're playing on concrete.
Ugh. Or you're playing on tractor tires.
Yeah, that's why they really decided against it, was because they did put the strip on there when it got cold and turn on the heaters, and common sense said exactly what was going to happen.
I'm always in favor of what God invents. Leave it alone. He did a good job with it. And grass fields.
Or Mother Nature.
Well, she was involved. He assigned it to her, and she did it. But so places like Tampa should always be natural grass. Places like Green Bay, Chicago, until they go in a dome. But I think the dome teams have to address it, because if there really is that many more injuries, you can't afford
28% is a big number. And with how serious they've taken concussions over the years, you need to take serious the other injuries that are happening as well. I think another big thing is in the NFL, going and playing on different surfaces throughout the year is also hard, because you can cut a certain way in Green Bay. The ground's harder. And you can't cut that same way in LA, which is a very different surface.
Here's my question. For head injuries is when you get smoked and you get laid out on the ground, is the field turf field softer to land on than grass?
Doubt it makes a difference.
I don't know.
When a 280-pound man who is solid muscle hits you that hard, I don't think it makes a difference.
Yeah, it's not going to be pretty.
Snow would be the most comfortable is the answer to that.
A large pile of snow.
Large pile of snow would be the correct answer. I don't know. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see where the NFL goes. From a semantic standpoint, I don't know how you could put that in place to answer, what you were asking. I don't know how that's possible because you'd have to lay down dirt in these domes
Which
in all
they can
reality. And then, there's places like Dallas you can make it work because they do have light. Minnesota has light coming in. It's a lot of windows.
True.
So in those places you could. SoFi, again, a lot of glass. So you can make it work. Even for domes that don't have that, Detroit and Indianapolis would be the two that really don't have that set up. How is it going to work there?
I mean, my only thought is you can put dirt on the field without a problem as an underlayment, but stitching together that much sod and bringing it in for every game doesn't make a lot of sense.
It wouldn't be every game. You couldn't. But then again, Green Bay resods their field all the time.
True. They do it in the winter.
Even with field turf, you're still having to redo that.
I don't know. Green Bay does it when the field in between the 20s gets so torn up. They put down a new thing of grass. And I'm always amazed at how they stitch it up to the point where it never just gets chunked up and gets tossed around.
No, not unless it's really wet.
Yeah, and then you're playing on mud, and that's the softest thing you can fall
Exactly. It's going to be an interesting concept. I think it is a good conversation that Pete Carroll did a very good job bringing to light. But speaking of Pete Carroll,
yes,
we do need to make football picks. But before
we
do that, have a very happy Halloween episode. And while you're down there, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get to enjoy the show as much as we enjoy making it. That was probably the worst time I've ever done that because I didn't know what I wanted to say, and it failed. And I apologize, but subscribe anyways because it's fun to watch people fail.
Write stuff out. Then you don't
it's
make
more
those
fun.
kind of mistakes.
I'm better at winging it.
Okay, we'll get into
At least I think I am. I don't know.
Get into the football picks, which, by the way, folks, we have had an atrocious first half.
Not if we listened to me last week.
I did. You got 67 points. It wasn't that great. We were middle of the road again.
Well, at least I made the right pick last night, and Baltimore won, and that gets us the points.
I need to break something to you. We did it at the last second. I just sent it in, and I sent Tampa Bay in for 5. I'm sorry.
I said Baltimore for 8.
The home team always wins Thursday nights.
I remember specifically saying, go with Lamar Jackson's number for 8.
I apologize. I made a mistake. I screwed up.
Why did you pick Tampa Bay?
It's at home on a Thursday night. Those teams always win, except last night. Let's talk about some other games, shall we?
This is why we're losing.
No, we're not. That's not why we're losing. We're losing because we are terrible at picking games.
2 teams that were the surprise, one of them involving Pete Carroll, the other one, the New York Football Giants. It should be an amazing game. The Giants are 6-1. The Seahawks are 4-3. It is in Seattle.
I'm going with Seattle.
Oh, I can't pick against New York.
Oh.
Daniel Jones has been a god this year. And it's interesting because these are players that New York was ready to get up on. Saquon Barkley, they're calling for him to be traded.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Jones, they were saying bench him, get rid of him. And this year with an actual head football coach who knows how to call a game, all of a sudden these guys are playing what you thought they were going to play like when they were drafted.
Let's face it, the NFC is terrible this year.
That doesn't have anything to do with the fact that the Giants are 6-1.
And Seattle is 4-2, and who would have guessed that? What's that?
4-3.
4-3. Who would have guessed that this season? It's in Seattle. They don't lose in Seattle very often.
They're 2-1 at home this year, and the Giants are 3-0 on the road. They haven't lost on the road.
All right, we'll go with that.
And that includes the London game. I just think that the Giants...
We have to bring up that game.
Yeah.
We should have. Yeah, go on.
Listen, I'm a Cubs fan. I'm used to this type of stuff. I'm just kind of putting my baseball hat on and saying, I'm used to this. I turned off the game after the third quarter last week. I had no interest in watching the
awful.
failure versus a terribly named football team.
So I'm going to go on to the game I think will be interesting for a lot of reasons. Denver at Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville is going to win going away.
You're obsessed with Denver this year. You are obsessed with Denver this year. It's overseas. It's a London game.
I know. I'm still going to take Jacksonville. I think they're the better team.
2-5 teams. Jacksonville's been a disappointment for me this year. I mean, I thought they'd be better. They started off better. Still remembering, again, this in all reality is Trevor Lawrence's rookie year.
Correct.
And he's playing really well. I mean, he's got 1,700 yards. He's got 9 touchdowns already. He is playing really, really well. Travis Etienne was hurt. He's doing well. Christian Kirk has lived up to the billing for the most part.
Denver is such a train wreck. It's almost, you've got to watch it. It's like going past an accident.
Well, is Wilson playing?
I have no idea.
He made the trip. Apparently was working out in the aisle.
It's probably where he should be sitting. It's just, it's been awful.
I don't know.
What's your next game? Or you want me to pick another one?
I think a very interesting game, and you are probably going to laugh at me for this one and not think it's as interesting as I do, but I think you have to look at the Cowboys and the Bears.
It's my next pick.
Was it? The Bears looked great against New England. They shouldn't be looking the way that they are. They are 3-4 this year. Now 1-3 on the road, so I think the Cowboys are going to win because they are 3-1 at home. But Justin Fields has been playing to his strengths, and they've been winning ball games, and he's looking more and more confident as time goes on.
That's when he's going to become dangerous, because at that point is when he's going to turn into a true NFL quarterback.
Right. Listen, I said from the word go when the 49ers offered a trade for Aaron Rodgers to make that trade and draft Justin Fields. I really thought that he was going to be the best quarterback out of that draft. And the last time I said that was when Josh Allen was drafted. So you know I'm going to be right for the second time.
Of course.
I was nervous when the Bears got him because he was good. And as long as the Bears didn't do what the Bears do to quarterbacks, I think he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league in the next 5 years.
Here's an interesting game. San Francisco going to the Rams. I'm taking San Francisco in this one.
Here's my question with the McCaffrey trade, and we touched on it and then we squirreled out on the last episode, but talking about the McCaffrey trade, why make that trade if you're the 49ers? Like you make the trade for a player at a position that you're not weak.
I think they just want as many weapons as they can get and thought they needed something to put him over the top. He played really well last week.
He did. He's going to play really
Yeah.
well. He's an outstanding athlete and running back in this league, and it allows Debo to go out to the outside a little bit more. You can spread out Christian McCaffrey. I agree that it gives a lot to that offense. But, I mean, it doesn't change the fact that you have a quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo who underthrows your receivers half the time.
Yes, but having him in there gives him a lot more underneath options, plus a running option, as you said. He can put Debo out to on the wing a little bit more, and
we'll see how it turns out. I agree you can never have too many
wins.
weapons, but to give up 4 draft picks for a player that you're going to have to re-sign and a player that's at a position that you don't need, that's strapped your cap to nothing now.
They did. But if they're in a win now, this is their year. They have to win now. This is the last year with Garoppolo.
I mean, that's sad if you think about it, because you spent a number 3 overall pick and traded 3 first-round picks to go to number 3 to draft a quarterback who your team is now better off without.
He wasn't ready to step into the starting lineup.
If you're the number 3 overall pick, you should be ready to step into the starting.
But he wasn't. And he's hurt now. The smartest thing they did was not trade Jimmy Garoppolo. They knew something.
They got lucky.
They knew something.
They got lucky. They tried to trade him. Nobody would trade for him because they didn't know how his shoulder was.
Well, and they weren't going to get enough, but they were lucky. But better lucky than good. It's going to work out for them. they're probably the lead contender for the Super Bowl out of the NFC.
Except the Eagles, who are undefeated.
Look, my concern with the Eagles, they've been so hot so early that can they maintain that through 17 games? Do we lest I should remind you of the 2014 Green Bay Packers, who were 15-1 and just got worse and worse towards the end of the season.
It's going to be the question. It really is. I mean, that's happened to a lot of teams where they have a hot start like this and don't end up doing anything. It's getting hot at the right time in the NFL. They have a lot of weapons on that Eagles team.
The season starts after Thanksgiving. Then it's a race to the finish.
Correct. It's position yourself. It's like racing the Kentucky Derby, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about positioning yourself the best you can when you go around that final turn, and then it's an all-out sprint for victory. It's the same concept. I'm with you. This is the second or the fourth quarter of the season is what means everything.
Correct. And it's whoever is hot going in there. The Giants did that one year. Green Bay did it one year.
That's why so many wild card teams end up in the Super Bowl. It's because it is who gets hot at the right time.
It's also why there should be no wild card in baseball. But we'll talk about that later.
That's next week's episode.
Yes, it is. And that's going to be heated because I am so disgusted with baseball. And here's one just for fun.
I'm with you.
Here's one just for fun. How badly is Buffalo going to beat Green Bay?
It's going to go one of two ways. I can tell you that.
It's in Buffalo.
Either it's going to be a blowout where the Bills just absolutely annihilate the Packers on primetime television.
It could be a 55-10 game.
It could very easily be a 55-10 game. Or it's going to be a close game and the Packers are actually going to show up and not, because here's the issue with the Packers as of late is they played down to their competition. It was that way last year. They played down to their competition. You can't play down to the Bills now.
The problem is Packers have no weapons. Lazard didn't practice again on Wednesday.
He's out.
He's out.
He's on IR. Or no, Watkins is on IR. Lazard's most likely out. Sammy Watkins is most likely out. I don't know who the receivers are going to be.
So that's just it. Green Bay has no weapons. Even if they brought somebody in that was really talented, Rodgers hasn't had enough time to work with them.
If you bring in somebody who can actually play the wide receiver position, you don't need that much time.
You need a little time before a game on Sunday. Look, this is the problem.
You just need somebody who can read a defense.
And we've got Green Bay has nothing. And I think it's going to be a blowout. And I'm still putting this on Gutekunst. You know, everybody's saying, well, Rodgers is missing his receivers, blah, blah, blah. No, Gutekunst did not get him any speed, people, any talent. That's the worst wide receiving core, perhaps, in the history of the game.
It's awful. It's bad. Well, and I've never seen a team like this except for the Vikings when Favre went there that have been really a good team. They're just one player away. People are giving the Packers defense a lot of shit right now, and I don't understand it. Like, they're number 6 in points allowed in a game. Mm-hmm. At some point, your offense has to put points on the board.
At some point, the offense has to be on the field in the second half more than 3 plays.
Well, that's the other thing is you're letting your defense just get gassed later in games because in the first half, the Packers defense is shutting everybody down. But then all of a sudden our offense goes 3 and out 8,000 times and they're just tired.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I think LaFleur's job is on the line at this point because I don't think he's managed it.
Gutekunst's job is on the line. You want to talk about a job that should be on the line? Look at his drafts the last few years. He has done nothing to help this team. He's made good picks in the first round, but if you talk about the depth needed to support a team, his second, third, fourth, fifth round picks, we're talking about being so bad that 60% of those players drafted in the second to fifth round in the last 4 years are no longer on the team.
And that's unacceptable. As is the fact, if you're building a team and you lose the best receiver in football, it's borderline. No, it's not even borderline. Your job should be gone by not backfilling that with some truly exceptional receivers.
He tried. If you don't remember, he drafted 3 wide receivers when it was the MVS draft in the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th round. None of them are on the team. 2 of them are not even in the league anymore.
Everybody was upset when we lost MVS. I was not, because
Dude can catch the ball. He still can't catch the ball.
he can't catch the ball at all. So Green Bay, no shot in this game. They have no weapons. The only weapons they have are their two running backs.
You know what we have?
Problem to communicate.
Hope. That's what I'm holding on to.
Thank you, Shawshank Redemption.
Without hope, we have nothing. It worked for Braveheart. It almost worked for the Confederacy.
Just yell freedom
Freedom!
as he's getting his intestines ripped out.
You can take our homes, but you can't take our freedom.
You do that. I cannot do that. Anyways, any other games you want to talk about on this list? There's not a lot of great games.
There's always great games. It's the NFL. No, the Titans-Texans game, who cares? Steelers-Eagles, I mean, the Eagles are going to win big. The Patriots-Jets are going to be interesting, but I don't think Matt Jones is playing. What makes that interesting is the fact that Mac Jones got benched last week for Zappe, which
he's done.
Instantly leads to a quarterback controversy in that situation. The Raiders-Saints, two teams are looking to turn their teams around. Vikings-Cardinals. Cardinals are going to lose by a lot. Dolphins-Lions, you really jinxed that team. All Lions fans need to look at you.
Yeah, that's on me. That's too bad, because they actually do have a decent roster.
The Panthers-Falcons interest me because the Falcons are going to win this game. And the Falcons are still having a shot at going to the playoffs. Like, the Falcons are a better team than people give them credit for. I said that in the beginning that they were going to be good, and I still think they're going to end up winning a lot of games. They've been in every single game.
Cincinnati Cleveland is the Monday night game. Cincinnati should win that going away, although it probably will be a good game.
It always is, because it's those two. So nothing really on the game specifically, but since we are having a giant baseball episode next week, it will be the first show next week, so make sure you don't miss it. But I do want to talk to you about something I came across, which is the diet that Babe Ruth had as he was with the Yankees.
I loved his diet. I live on his diet. Basically, I love hot dogs.
So according to supporting documentations, now I'm just going to tell you his daily breakfast.
Okay.
So according to supporting documentation, the great Bambino would wake up in the morning and eat porterhouse steak. Not just any steak. Porterhouse steak.
Bacon, eggs.
And potatoes.
Yeah.
Along with half a dozen eggs. And then wash it down, not with one, not with two, but with 4 cups of bourbon and ginger ale. He'd start his day. Now, what's funny about that is if you think about taking out the bourbon and ginger ale, right? That's what strongmen eat to start their day. Like, people training for strongman competitions, that's their breakfast.
And as far as the bourbon and ginger ale goes, I divert to Bob Uecker, who once said, "Hey, anybody can play this game straight. Go on and get a jag on, and then come and play and talk to me."
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I mean, that's a lot of protein.
It's a lot of protein. He was a big man, and we've talked about this before. Back in the 70s, when Johnny Bench was a superstar,
right?
They brought out one of Babe Ruth's bat, a 44-ounce bat, and Johnny's holding the thing, going, "You'd have to be a hell of a man to lift this thing." To get a 44-ounce bat through the strike zone, he had to be incredibly strong.
Well, and it explains how strong he was by the amount of protein that he ate. This is an insane amount, but let's go on to later in the day. So Ruth would consume 2 steaks for lunch. Again, nice steaks, ribeyes, porterhouse, nice steaks. 2 steaks for dinner. Sometimes he would throw in lamb chops as a treat.
Okay.
And would snack up to a dozen hot dogs every day.
When I worked in the minor leagues, that was my breakfast, lunch, and dinner because they were free.
As an after-dinner dessert, he'd have chocolate ice cream and pickled eels. I don't know what that is. Sounds gross.
But, he's almost like he grew up in an orphanage. So like people that grew up in the Depression, food was scarce. So when you get to the point where you can afford food, you're going to eat well.
That's over 10,000 calories a day.
People lived outside a lot more even back in that day.
Babe Ruth didn't.
Oh, sure he did. He was burning that off. Although he did get a little pudgy towards the end. I love Babe Ruth. Greatest player.
No wonder his knees gave out. That dude had to be carrying 400 pounds.
No, he was probably 250. He wasn't a overly tall man. Still the greatest player to have ever played the game.
His for a 44-ounce bat, I tell you, and that much protein, it makes sense. His forearms and triceps,
Popeye.
Oh, they must have been bigger than anything you've ever seen.
They had to be just like iron.
And his back leg, his left leg, his lefty, must have been just a horse's thigh. I mean, he was probably the strongest man to ever play the game of baseball.
Either him or maybe Bo Jackson.
Or Babe Ruth. Or Barry Bonds.
Yeah. Okay. Ruth ate steaks and Bonds put a pharmacy
Bonds ate testosterone.
Arm. He put a pharmacy into his arm and butt every day. We don't talk about cheaters on this show.
Just saying, he cheated to get there, but he had to be pretty strong.
Yeah, he destroyed the greatest records in all of sports by cheating.
Anyways, sorry, it was a joke, and obviously he took it too seriously. Back to Babe Ruth. Can you imagine eating that diet?
No.
Just for a day?
No.
Can you eat that much food in a day?
No, I think he had to be just eating all the time.
I mean, just to start the day.
A dozen hot dogs.
So you wake up, and the first thing you have is steak and potatoes.
Okay.
Which is, I can barely finish steak and potatoes for dinner. I mean, that's a lot of starch.
This is a farm diet where you go out and you work in the morning, you come in and you'd have a half dozen eggs and steaks and whatever you've got.
Steak, potatoes, along with a half a dozen eggs.
It's a lot.
It's right in front of you.
Nope.
You're right, though. Back during when you're working on the farm the way that you are, I'm sure your body was craving that type of calories.
That's where the old, you'd watch the old TV commercials where a balanced breakfast, besides a bowl of cereal, included eggs and bacon and toast and hash browns, all of that.
Well, that's where the food pyramid came from. It was based on a diet for people that didn't exist anymore when they came up with the food pyramid.
I look at, you've got cousins, I've got cousins that still work on the farm.
Yeah.
The craziest, strongest people I've ever known.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the amount of work they do and the lifting they do and the just sheer muscle they have to do their jobs. I have so much respect for farmers. I couldn't live their life because I couldn't breathe, but
well, you're allergic to everything.
On the farm. But just thank God they're there, though. They feed the world.
They do.
But Ruth, I think, was just naturally strong.
Oh, for sure. And you had this on. So, I mean, it's crazy to think. So he'd have 5 steaks a day minimum, plus 2 lamb chops half the time. He'd have a dozen eggs every single day. He'd have 12 hot dogs to go with those steaks every single day.
That's my favorite part. That's a lot of hot dogs.
And then ice cream and pickled eels. That's where I lose on I could eat everything else that's on here. I couldn't eat the pickled eels.
I could not start my day with brandy and ginger ale. I'd be asleep.
Bourbon. Okay. I can't drink bourbon anyways.
I can't either.
I can't drink dark liquor. I sailed with Captain once, and we had an argument, and the Captain won, and now I don't sail anymore.
17 years old, get into a guy's liquor cabinet, 7 assorted shots of whiskey, scotch, whatever else was in there. I have not touched brown liquor since.
No.
I just can't do it.
No. Even when I was drinking more than I ever should have, I was not drinking brown liquor.
That cured me from being... I didn't drink for 2.5 years after that. My 18th birthday, when you could drink at that age, I never touched one.
Nope. I've never been more sick. I did set myself on fire, but that's a different story. Don't drink and go camping is the answer on that one.
Good idea.
But what a diet. What a diet.
I don't think it's that...
Every day.
I know. And I don't know that if it's that surprising back in the day. I really don't. I don't know what the average person ate. I mean, the 12 hot dogs and just the sheer amount of food, you're right, it's 10,000 calories.
I have no issues with the steak and eggs and potatoes in the morning, the steaks at lunch and the steaks at dinner, maybe some lamb chops and the ice cream and pickled eels. Like, I have no issues with that, right? That, I agree. That was probably, for a wealthy person, back in that day, or a farmer who had the cows that were being slaughtered at that time, yes, that was probably a pretty average meal.
Right.
It's the 12 hot dogs throughout the day included in that.
That's just insane.
That's a lot of hot dogs.
That's a lot of
That's
hot
a
dogs.
whole pack of hot dogs every single day. On top, I mean, imagine just the carbs, because he's obviously eating the buns.
Of course.
Plus, you're not including whatever condiments he put on it. It was New York, so it wasn't ketchup, but it was probably mustard and relish and stuff of that nature.
Whatever they had at the time, peppers, who knows? Onions for sure.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? It's probably depending on the city.
Oh. Well, whatever he ate, it served to make him the greatest of all time.
Just nuts. Although you can't count his pitching stats.
We aren't getting into that today.
It's dead ball era.
We're not getting into that. We're just not. He's the greatest player. The only one that might have a chance to break him of that is playing today with Ohtani.
Already has, because he did both during the live ball era.
Stop it.
Anyways, I think we've had an amazing show today. I hope you guys have agreed. You let us know in the comments below. And while you're down there, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get to enjoy this show as much as we enjoy making it. It was much better that time.
Yeah.
It is time now for the scariest part of my day, which is any last words?
2 quick ones. Number 1, you take your kids out to go trick-or-treating. Apparently, there's a lot of fentanyl that looks like candy, so make sure you check.
Nobody's giving fentanyl to kids. Nobody's giving fentanyl to kids.
Until they do.
Nobody's giving fentanyl to kids.
Check your kids' candy. Make
Nobody's
sure it's safe.
giving razor blades and apples.
Nobody gave that.
Nobody's giving fentanyl to kids.
Check your kids' candies. Be safe.
Yeah, check their candies like I do, where you just pretend you're checking it because you want to eat their candy.
Look,
Nobody's putting drugs in kids' candy.
I'm not taking a chance on this, especially out in places like Los Angeles.
You need to stop watching.
Stop it. Second thing is, and this may take just a second, but Stephen A. Smith has a new podcast.
Yeah.
And he talks about anything just like we do.
Yeah.
Whatever trips his trigger. I think at this point, he is the dean of American sportscasters. He has more respect as a sportscaster and as just a personality than anybody else out there.
He has more integrity than most people.
To me, he's this generation's Howard Cosell, and I mean that as a compliment.
Wow.
That's a compliment. It's not the bombastic Howard Cosell that people made fun of. Howard Cosell was one of the most brilliant sportscasters. He was a lawyer. He was well-read, defended Muhammad Ali when nobody else would. And Stephen A. Smith has that kind of integrity. And I've listened to a couple of his podcasts. They're very good. So if you haven't listened to it when you're done watching Sports Talk with Dad, which should always be the first thing you watch, go and check out Stephen A. Smith's podcast. I would love to have him as a guest one day. His story is amazing. You were telling me about what happened when he was
fired from ESPN.
Right.
In like 2010, he was fired from ESPN. No network would touch him at all. He was out of work for 2 years.
Just insane.
And then ESPN hired him back, but wouldn't let him be on television.
What did he do? Just like background
I don't know.
work?
I didn't hear. All I heard was that part. I heard a clip of one of his interviews, and it's amazing because he now is the face of ESPN. And it started with that show with Skip Bayless.
Sure.
And I agree. I mean, I do like Stephen A. Smith's takes a lot. I may not always agree with all of his takes, but he does have integrity and doesn't back down.
No, and they're always thought-provoking. And he will have, people look at him and think, oh, he's just a far left wing. No, he's not. He's not a Republican. He's not
I
a Democrat.
don't think people look at him as politics at all. He's a sports analyst.
No, I think people do, because some of his takes that he's been on different shows, people try to pigeonhole him, and you cannot do that with him.
No.
So I
think he's like every other American, where you just are tired of seeing the commercials and can't wait for election day to be done.
Oh, I know that's the case. But so anyways, that's my 2 things. Check your kids' candies. And
they're not. Don't be afraid. People are not putting fentanyl in your kids' candy.
Just make sure they're not.
The sheer idea of why would a drug dealer give away their drug for free like that when that's how they make their living?
Really?
Like, nobody's that much of a psychopath.
Really? You're saying nobody's that much of a psychopath in America today? Why would somebody walk into a school and just start firing? Come on. Of course, there are people that are that low life to do that.
Listen, the people that are putting fentanyl in candy, you're not going to their house. People are not putting fentanyl in candy.
Stop it. Just stop.
You stop.
Watch Sports Talk with Dad, then go and watch Stephen A. Smith's podcast or listen to it, and then come back and rewatch old episodes of Sports Talk with Dad.
And make sure you don't listen to old man news like my father does, because then they'll convince you that people are putting fentanyl in your kids' candy. Anyways, thank you so much for watching Sports Talk with Dad. As always, we really appreciate you tuning in. We will see you next week for our outstanding baseball episode. Until then, have a very happy Halloween and a great weekend. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.